All right, hi everybody. This is Thomas Reuter,
This is also Ariana Chen.
and we are so excited to lead your Fall 2021 Senior Editor Workshop. We're sorry that we can't be there with you in person, but we will be there at future meetings to help answer any questions. And at the end of this slideshow, we have our emails as well, so please refer any questions to us. Your editor-in-chiefs, Caroline and Reeve, will be able to answer any questions after our presentation. So let's jump into it. We already said our names, but I'll leave it to Ariana Chen to tell you a little bit more about herself.
Sure. So my name's Ariana. I'm a senior in FCRH this year. This is my third year in the Law Review, and this year I'm the co-managing editor with Thomas. And so what that basically means is that we work really closely, specifically with senior editors, to match you guys to the writers, ensure that the editing process is fruitful for you, because it's a really great learning opportunity, honestly, to learn more about Blue Book and collaborating with other people and just the copy editing process in general.
And again, my name is Thomas Reuter. I am a senior as well. I'm studying political science. And this is also my third year on the Law Review. I was a senior editor the past few years and published in Volume 1 an article on mootness. So let's get into it a little bit. This presentation will include a timeline, what we expect for you to return different the pseudo abstract this year, and then round 1 edits and round 2 edits, how to communicate with writers, what we've done with the new editors packet, and then some just simple notes on how to edit. Start with our timeline. So today, Senior Editor Workshop, you're here, check. A week from now is going to be the Senior Editor and Writer meeting. Want to talk a little bit about what this entails?
Sure. This is a really great opportunity, it's mandatory, for you to meet the writer that you'll be working with throughout the year, or throughout the semester, I should say, working on editing their notes, formulating ideas, brainstorming sources, checking through credible sources, and things like that. It's an opportunity for them to talk to you about what they have so far, potential concerns they have for the upcoming year, and best times and ways for you to collaborate logistically. We'll talk about this in later slides, but it's really important that we establish this connection for you guys, and that we're very excited to have the opportunity to do that.
We also have the outline, summary, draft, thesis edits. That's kind of a mouthful. It used to be the abstract edits. We think that this will be an easier ask of staff writers, and also maybe something more helpful for you to have an idea of what they're going to write about. And so you will receive their outline, summary, and draft thesis on October 5th. Review it, talk it over with them, take a meeting, and then return it by October 12th. October 12th is the first writers' workshop, and so that is when your staff writers will really get into the nitty-gritty of what their note looks like. We've also got round 1 edits, and again, we'll talk about what round 1 edits and round 2 edits should be like in later slides, but just to keep the dates on your calendar, October 12th is when you'll receive the first draft of the note. You'll return notes by November 2nd. Round 2 edits, you'll receive their second iteration of their note November 16th, return it November 23rd. Final drafts are all due by November 30th.
And this goes for all the dates on this timeline, but if anything pops up between you and your writer generally, but particularly as it relates to timeline, definitely reach out to Thomas and I, and also the editor-in-chiefs, or the general Law Review email, which is fulr@fordham.edu, with any amendments that are needed to the timeline. I think obviously we're all human. It's been a really interesting year and a half for everyone, and so we are notoriously very accommodating for unprecedented circumstances that come up.
Yes. It's helpful to break it up just so that you don't get overwhelmed. I'm one to procrastinate, but at the same time, we're all students first. So what she said. All right, communication with writers. I tried to come up with a little acronym. Talk often. Talk. Teach, ask, language or linguistics, and then obviously kindness. Teach them what Fordham Undergraduate Law Review is and does. Show them examples of past volumes. What does it mean to write a law review note as opposed to a literary analysis paper or something more of like a journalist paper. The law review is unique, and it's not something that a lot of classes preview for students, and so this is a time to teach your staff writer what that entails. A, ask. Ask them what they need. A lot of the staff writers are underclassmen, and they may have questions about this process, so I guess teach and ask go into the same category. See what they need if they need help finding a topic, if they need help narrowing their note to something a little bit more specific. If they're having trouble with one of the databases that you recommend, be sure to ask them and not just expect them to ask you. Language and linguistics, I wanted to tie to round 2 of edits, which again we'll cover in a separate slide. But this is helping them with the actual formatting of our publication. You can get all the information that you need in Fuller's style guide. And then K, kindness. You always have to have kindness in there. The second thing that I recommend is to schedule a meeting. Schedule a meeting often. I wrote that we encourage at least 2 or 3 meetings with your staff writer, but take as many as you think that the staff writer needs or that you need. I think that in-person meetings are really helpful. I remember my senior editor, when I was writing a note, met with me in Dealey and put my entire structure on one of the whiteboards, and we talked through it, and I was able to share with the senior editor my hopes for the note. Anyways, it was only about 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, but helped my writing process tremendously. And so I think in-person is valuable, although Zoom is always an option. If you are interested in doing an in-person meeting, you will make a reservation for a room through Rams Involved, otherwise known as Fordham's Community. Once you navigate to Rams Involved, you'll see a tab on the upper banner that says Event Request. Once you get in there, navigate to Rose Hill Fordham Undergraduate Law Review, put our advisor, Father Horn, and then one of our editor-in-chief's names down as well, and then select a classroom or a meeting space that you think would work well for you and your staff writer. Again, all reservations should be made 3 to 5 business days in advance, so talk to your staff writer, find a good time for you, and then submit your request as early as possible.
And then I think generally in terms of communications with writers, I think that first of all, we can't understate the importance of communicating with your writer. I think it's obviously the basis of forming a relationship with your writer and ensuring that the best possible content is reaching both the editorial board and ultimately the publication, which should be the goal as a senior editor, at least in terms of purpose. So the minimum goal that we're establishing for communication with writers this year, obviously minimum meaning that you can meet with your writer as often as you want or as often as you feel necessary, and I think that what will be necessary will vary from writer to writer, but the minimum goal is 2 meetings with your writer and 3 emails with the staff writers. So the first being an introductory email, possibly prior to meeting them on the 28th or possibly afterwards, whatever you feel is appropriate, where you can introduce yourself as their senior editor, which is good so that they have your contact information. You will receive their contact information prior to this point, obviously, and then that would be a good time to offer some dates and times that you're available to meet, just to set up the logistics of meeting with them and when your schedules will align and things like that throughout the semester, and also giving an estimate for when they should look for your edits. So this relates back to the timeline and how everyone sort of works on their own schedule. Try to give them, what would be an adequate amount of time for them to review your edits, obviously, before their second iteration of drafts are due, but definitely work out an estimate of what your schedule is going to look like throughout the year. So there is like a general timeline of like mandatory dates that you have to meet, but I think within that, every staff writer and senior editor establishes their own de facto timeline. The second email would be following up on after you make your round 1 edits, so letting them know that you're making their edits, even though I'm sure that they will know from the bajillion Google suggestion emails that they get. It's good to follow up and let them know that you've finished at least so that they can go in and look it over. Give a brief overview of your edits and concerns, broad comments. Encourage your writer to point out the strong points of that note. That kind of goes back to kindness. Sometimes sometimes the editorial process, especially for underclassmen, maybe this is their first time writing, not only in a legal setting, but like a research paper, definitely point out some strong points of their note or some general good things that you're noticing, and offer some dates and times that you'd be available to meet with them. Whether it be over Zoom or in person, I think it's important to sort of be able to articulate any questions that you have for them, depending on how serious it is, or for them to offer any questions to you about how they can improve in the future, which can be hard to do over email correspondence sometimes. Also, include an indication of which volume or which publication seems best fitting for them. This is going to be a little more relevant towards the beginning about whether or not you think timeline-wise it would be more appropriate for them to pursue an online or physical print publication article. And then the third email would be following up on the round 2 edits, so continue to include an overview of your comments and edits, essentially the same thing as you're including in the round 1 edit email, and also schedule a more immediate meeting to finalize the draft, which is due pretty soon after the round 2 edits are made, since there should be different types of edits made after round 2 that are more formatting based and a little easier to implement. So generally speaking, you're sending an introductory email, and every time that you make edits on their note, you should be emailing them, letting them know that you make the edits, and you should be meeting with them so that they can ask any questions that they have.
Cool. All right, moving forward. Editor's packet. We have a new editor's packet this year. Excited to show it to you. Your editor packet includes the basics of the peer review process, the citation and style guide, just a link to the citation and style guide, but you should review that document as well. It's a PDF on there. The timeline, a checklist for round 1 and round 2, contact information, a resource page for staff writers, that's the different databases, and then a sample note. And the sample note is actually one of the primary reasons why we wanted to make the new editor's packet a Google Doc, because you will be editing on a Google Doc as well in the suggesting mode, and so we wanted to show you what that looks like. So I will take us there now if I can. Hopefully you guys can see this. So this is our new senior editor's packet, which will be shared with all of you. Ariana and I wrote a little note encouraging you, welcoming you to Fuller again. So again, this is what is included in the senior editor's packet. The basics, what it means to be a senior editor, to attend this workshop, to schedule one-on-ones, to understand our style guide, that sort of deal. The peer review process. Think about this peer review process?
Yeah, I think that the law review has a very particular way, especially as a student-run publication, that we participate in the peer review process. So we just sort of talk about the importance of it and sort of how that works, meaning that you're reviewing articles and that you're reviewing and constantly communicating with your writer about sort of the edits that need to be made. So we lay out the process here specifically about how you're sort of the first phase in the editing process and how that will eventually move on to the editorial board and move towards the executive notes and online editors, and then eventually me and Thomas and the editors-in-chief.
Perfect. Blue Book. If you don't know already, I assume that you do, but if you don't, the Fuller uses Blue Book for our citation styles. We've adapted it a little bit to fit Fuller's needs. But if you have any questions, you can navigate here to the PDF and find this handy dandy style guide, which we'll talk, which you should go through as you do your round 1 and round 2 edits to make sure that the font is the appropriate size, that footnotes and block quotes are formatted correctly, that they have page numbers in the right spot. This citation thing I have found is also the most helpful. When do you use IBID or contra or C? This style guide will be able to help you with all of those questions. So when you're going through your round 1 and 2 edits, I suggest having this doc open simultaneously with the draft note that you receive. All right, back to the senior editor packet. Timeline, we went over this in our slide, but it's there to refer back to. Contact information and office hours. Any of us here on the e-board are ready and available to help you. Ariana and I, our whole job is to support senior editors, so we have bolded our contact information right here. So feel free to reach out to us anytime throughout the process if you have questions about a note, if you don't know exactly which publication or which format it should go in, if you have trouble making an event request, or anything in between, we are here for you. But here are the emails of everybody on the e-board. Some resources.
Yeah, so I think that you'll find as you're editing your writer's note, maybe they're having problems brainstorming what to write about is step number one. Maybe they're having issues finding legal sources or citing court cases and things like that. So we've compiled a database of what we think are reliable sources to include in your law review notes. So this includes the Fordham Library database, JSTOR, things like LexisNexis, which we anticipate you guys will be using a lot for citing court cases. We've got some information about general resources as it relates to the law review, like the style guide we talked about before, our most recent volume to include the note tracker, which we will be including, which is another great thing about Google Doc. We can update it. We will be including that as we start up the note tracker, as the notes start coming in, our website, SCOTUS blog, and things like that.
Just a really quick rule of thumb that have found helpful personally. If you want a quick summary of what a case entails, go to OIA. But OIA isn't necessarily something to cite. It'll just give you a little bit of background. LexisNexis is going to be really helpful for law reviews and for federal court cases. Westlaw, if you're focusing on something like local to New York, Westlaw may be a little bit more helpful. And then obviously the library databases and JSTOR will be helpful for like the scholarly essays. Again, round one edit and checklist. We have slides on this, so I won't spend too much time. But just notice that there's a distinction between what you should keep in mind for your round one notes and your round two notes. Again, round two tending to be a little bit more formatting and style based. Round one being content based. And then here is the sample note. So as you see, Ariana and I have gone through a past note in volume 3 and again, this isn't what we published, this was a draft, but we have gone through, this is what a senior editor would do. And so, well, yeah, I'll see if anything specific to talk about here.
Yeah, I think we've included a lot of edits specific to round two notes. So we've included some formatting changes as it relates to like indenting paragraphs a specific way or bolding titles, the way that we italicize cases and things like that. But we've also included, especially since this was pulled from a round one edit, we've included a lot of content editing and relating things to the thesis and making everything succinct and concise and related to broad points that are mentioned in the thesis.
Yeah, in our comments we tried to kind of do two things. One, show you what a draft, or explain what a draft should look like. So this is what the introduction should look like, or this is how you correctly position a footnote, stuff like that. Ensure writers clearly articulate their thesis. We've also gone through though and done a correction like a senior editor would do, where you're correcting what the footnote is or what the content is itself or stuff like that. So we hope you find this helpful. Again, if you have any questions, that's what we're here for. All right, back to our slideshow. Cool.
So some general notes that you should be keeping in mind when you're editing just include when you're editing, you should be using the suggesting mode on Google Docs, which you do in the upper right-hand corner, and making sure that you're not directly editing the note. I think it's really important that writers have autonomy. It is something that they're working really hard on and that they're spending a lot of time, and that will ultimately be published under their name. So it's really important to us that, especially considering that this is a big learning process for everyone involved, that the suggesting mode is on, so that if there is something that comes up, there's room for sort of explanation or conversation about whatever is being suggested. For round one edits, we are asking you guys to focus on very structural things. So you don't need to worry about, obviously if something is spelled wrong, please fix it. But I think that we're not asking you to check all the T's, cross all the Y's. Nope, did that wrong. Cross all the T's, dot all your I's in round one. We're just asking you to sort of focus on shaping an argument in their note. So you should be asking really, is there a thesis? Is there an argument that can be disagreed with here? And how is the note organized? Is this organized in a way that is conducive for reading? Are we going from broad to specific? Is there a coherency to the note that's being written? And then is there proper context for claims? So are the sources that they're using reliable? Are they using something that is very partisan, or are they using something that is regarded as sort of like an objective source that uses neutral sort of databases to support their argument? And it should be the latter. They should not be using partisan sources, which we will cover later on. And then for round 2 edits, that's where we sort of have the technical focus on formatting and citations, and there will be a citation sort of workshop that you'll have before that will help you sort of acclimate to putting Blue Book into the citations. And then at this point, there should be 0 in spelling and grammar mistakes prior to it reaching the editorial board. But obviously we exist as sort of like a leeway between all of that.
Great. All right, again, this is, Ariana just went over round 1 and round 2. This first slide is like round 1. At first glance, you see, again, are the sources trustworthy and academic? Is there a clear introduction and structure? We recommend going through the note for the first time without editing anything. Read it, see what the staff writer is trying to convey, see if the questions that you have once you read like the first paragraph are addressed later in the essay, because then your comments will be a little bit more helpful to the staff writer. So go through the note for the first time without editing anything. Just read it, try to understand what do you observe, what questions you're left with, what is done well, what needs further attention. Then you can go through a second time and start making your comments. Common questions. When is it okay to use news articles? News articles can help provide context. They can show the history of different court cases. They shouldn't necessarily be used for analysis. Sound about right?
Yeah, they can also be used sometimes in very interesting ways to show, especially what's in an op-ed, like public opinion or common debates that have arisen based around the legal question, but should not be used in place of like a credible source, which would be JSTOR, Nexus Uni, a court case or something like that. It should also not be used to describe a court case, as Thomas said. If you're describing a court case, the best source to use would not necessarily be, as Thomas said, OIAs, but something like directly from the court case from Nexus Uni.
Perfect. Round 2 edits. We ask that you use the simplified note template. So we just talked to you all about formatting and stuff. But we are hoping to have you steer your staff writer to put their publication in a note template like this. It's going to be a little bit easier for Thomas to put it in to publication format if we just have kind of the bare bones. What's the title? What's the author's name? Biography, abstract, heading. So it makes it easier on you, your staff writer, and us if you just kind of transplant into this note template, which we will distribute. All right. Again, for small caps, you can use a small caps generator website. You can also find the little, it's in like the puzzle piece form of Google Docs will help you download different things that can help, like a small caps generator. Abstracts are always in italics except for court cases and titles, which would be normal. For citations, see the style guide that we just went through. Again, it's in your senior editor packet. And especially by the round 2 edits, ensure that everything is properly cited in Blue Book style. Okay, citation method.
For citation method, it's really important that writers are citing their sources, so particularly for online articles, but also for physical print publications. If they're using an online source, writers should have a link for each claim that they're making. It's really, really important that we tackle this in the beginning, and that's why we included that in the round 1 notes, because especially considering the breadth of time between round 1 and round 2 edits, it could be really hard to find these sources once we're sort of like a month or month 2 out from publication, and then it gets really complicated trying to replace it and stuff. So it's really important for every claim that an author is making, you know, if they're saying that something happened in 1988, the chances are that they knew that happened in 1988 are very slim, which means that they should probably be linking to a source that they got that information from. I think, you know, if that also opens up a conversation. If they can't include the link because it's a source that can't be substantiated, substantiated, then we should probably be redirecting them to credible sources. So it's really important that we include links for sources is the bottom line. We also have our style guide for citation method, which is linked here. We also have a YouTube that has some information about citation, and you will have all this information available to you. I'm sure this PowerPoint will be sent out afterwards. And oh, there you go. Upcoming citation and footnote workshop number 1 and number 2. Upcoming.
Yep, both at 6 p.m., same time as we normally meet. I will say with the writers and links, sometimes, especially for like the outline and the draft thesis, staff writers may just include the link where they found the information. And that's fine for kind of the abstract phase, even though we're moving away from that language. And then once it goes to kind of the round 1 edits, then you should be checking how they do their citations. A reminder, because it was something that I was confused about when I was first writing. Blue Book, everything should be in Blue Book's citation, not just court cases. So court cases may look a little bit cleaner in Blue Book citation, but if it is a scholarly essay or a news article, those should also be cited in Blue Book, and the style guide will help you with any questions for how that should look, as will our sample note on the senior editor resource page. Frequently asked questions.
FAQs. So what if my staff writer isn't responding to my emails or is no longer able to write their note? I think that this touches on a great point. You know, generally, Thomas and I's preference is that when you are communicating with your staff writer, particularly about big things like, I've finished editing your round 1 notes, here are my general observations, I finished editing your round 2 notes, we prefer that you CC FULR at fordham.edu in those communications, just so that we have record that that contact was made on our end, so we don't have to worry that a staff writer has not been communicated. It's just good to have for records. But generally, if this situation does come up, and it does, because, you know, like we said when we were talking about the timeline, unprecedented circumstances come up, where college students, a lot of things happen. If something like that happens, that would be the opportunity to email Thomas and I directly, and at that point you would either be assigned to another note or you would be tagged onto another senior editor's note, and you guys would sort of work on that together, which does happen sometimes when 2 senior editors are editing something, and it's a cool opportunity to collaborate with someone else and see what they're noticing and what you're noticing.
Can I edit additional notes? Yes, you can. Especially if you're like a second-year senior editor and you're familiar with the process, then take on 2 notes or 3 notes, that's fine. But know your bandwidth as well, because we're really encouraging constant communication with staff writers, some one-on-one meetings with staff writers, and again, this may depend of whether your writer is hoping to go for the print publication or for the online publication, but you can take on multiple notes, just be able to do each note that you edit very well. Hey Ariana, what if my staff writer is unreceptive to my edits or suggestions?
So I think that there are certain edits that are made that are sort of more abstract and about the note generally, like, oh, I think that commonly, you know, I would recommend that you orient your article this way. And I think that those are suggestions to a certain degree that they can choose to take or not. Obviously, if something is spelled wrong, they need to take that suggestion. And again, we would just recommend that you keep contact, especially if this is becoming a larger issue between you and them, with Thomas and I reaching out, and we would be happy to facilitate some sort of conversation about that, because at the end of the day, there is some sort of publishable standard that we have at the Law Review, especially based on this being our 5th volume, which is so exciting. So we are also involved in sort of making sure that staff writers are accepting a lot of the edits and suggestions that you're making, because we're very attuned to the fact that you are spending a lot of time editing these notes and that you're putting a lot of thought into the content that is being produced.
And often those different disagreements or difference in viewpoints can be smoothed over with conversation that it may be more productive in person than over email. So again, a good place to encourage a one-on-one meeting. And is there a sample edited note? Of course there is. We just showed it to you. Again, that is on your senior editor packet now as a Google Doc, so you can see exactly what kind of comments you'll be making. And
this is just our contact information again. This is in so many places. It's in the email chains if you're on our email list. It's in the senior editor packet. It's probably in the writer packet. It's right here for you. And so definitely reach out to Thomas and I if you have any questions about any of this stuff. We are so excited that you are all here and that you guys are excited. We hope that you guys are excited to be senior editors. I think that being a senior editor is a really great opportunity to, one, not only have a leadership role in this club as sort of like a mentor of sorts and an editor for staff writers, but also just to learn more about Blue Book. For a lot of senior editors, I know this might be your first time using Blue Book, and it's a really great opportunity for you to learn about it yourself and to build a lot of really valuable leadership skills.
Indeed. And again, after this, we want you to have a couple really important documents. We will send you these slides, we'll send you the senior editor workshop, the Fuller style and citation guide, and the calendar. And with those 4 docs, you should have the proper foundation to go in and edit some really interesting notes. That's about it from Ariana and I. Again, if you have any questions immediately, direct them to Reeve and Caroline and anybody else on our e-board. If you have questions for Ariana and I, we check our email far too often, and so shoot it our way. And we will be there with you at the next meeting. Very excited about it.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.